when you follow what feels right for you, there's a lot of clarity on the sidelines of that. It's not always what you're doing right in front of you, but on the sideline, you are highly likely to find something that is so true for you if you follow what feels right.
Welcome my guest, Ashley Stahl. She's a counter-terrorism professional turned career and public speaking coach, podcast host, and international bestselling author, passionate about helping others make what she likes to call a U-turn, where they discover their truest selves, attune to their intuition, and unlock greater clarity and fulfillment. With more than 8 million views, her TEDx talk has ranked among the top 100 TED Talks on the internet, and her self-development show, the U-Turn podcast, is ranked among top 100 mental health shows in the United States. Her private coaching has helped more than 40 storytellers book a spot on the TEDx stage, and she's also coached them on writing their speech. Her message is this: don't do what you love, do what you are. Well, I am so happy to welcome on Ashley Stahl to Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, as I was telling you, I actually learned about you quite some time ago. I've been following you, and I pre-ordered your book. I think it was 2 years ago when it came out, U-Turn, which I have right here. And I grabbed it pre-order, and I was trying to book you at this time. And I remember you were fully booked, so I kind of missed that bandwagon. And then you popped up in my head not that long ago. I'm like, I got to have her on. And I feel anybody listening today, this conversation couldn't be more relevant to today as it was yesterday. So I'm just so happy to have somebody of yourself that speaks so deep into really discovering the right career that's meant for you, and that it's relatively ever evolving, and really how to discover, where your place is, and really how to evolve with the things that could possibly unfold later in life as well. So we'll go deep into that conversation. So anyways, I'm super excited to learn more about you in preparation for this interview. First of all, as I was mentioning, your TED Talk is so freaking good. For anybody that hasn't listened to it, of course, I'm going to plug it in the show notes. This is something that actually prepping for this interview, I didn't even know you had this wildly successful podcast, which happens to be the top 100 TED Talk. Did I say podcast? Sorry. The TED Talk, top 100 TED Talk, over 8 million views. And I was listening to it, and it was so captivating. And I absolutely understand why it was so wildly popular. So we'll go deeper into that conversation. But first, I want people to know, actually, you've shifted identities in many ways in your career. And one of those specifically was actually your biggest U-turn that you made, which was from going from counterterrorism into career coaching, which is so wildly different. So if you could kind of talk about that and how that happened, wherever you would like to begin with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that all of us are multifaceted beings, and it's really challenging to fit the vastness of who we are into the world that we're living in, where there's these boxes. And I think most of us are realizing, especially ever since the pandemic kind of sparked this conversation around remote work, it kind of gave a permission slip for people to start looking at their energy levels and where they really feel alive. And so in my case, I went to college just like a lot of women in the US do. And I remember thinking, like, how am I supposed to major in something? I don't really know who I am or what I want. How can I pick a major? And it was so intimidating to me to choose some sort of degree or path when I knew so little about what it actually was like in the workplace, what it was actually going to be like with any of those paths that I chose. And I remember going to career services, and the woman said to me, follow your passion and do what you love and all the things. And I remember leaving feeling way more confused. And so I just majored in multiple things because I didn't really know what else to do. And I picked government, history, and French. I was always really good at learning languages. So I was like, you know what? I might as well just try this out. And I just remember feeling so lost, so intimidated, so overwhelmed. And to this day, I realized, only 27% of people is the most recent statistic I read, are using their degree. Your degree is not a marriage. It's here to serve you. You're not here to serve it. And I, since then, have given myself this huge permission slip to just follow the nudges. And I think a lot of people have a story in their head that if they follow these little inklings, their career is going to be chaotic, or it's going to look like a graveyard of trial and error. But I think that when you follow the nudges and you know how to tell a story about who you are in your career, what you're really good at, and you're able to carry the thread of where you've been shining in the past into the future and able to talk about it in a way that it makes sense for people, you give yourself the power to experiment. And I think it's through experimentation that we really are able to unlock a more fulfilling career.
Amazing. So counterterrorism to career coaching, how did that really come about? I mean, what landed you, first of all, in counterterrorism, and then how did that then pivot into the career coaching?
Well, I would say I've always been really good at learning languages. So I remember when 9/11 happened, I feel like everyone who's a millennial, they kind of knew where they were standing in like high school or wherever we were. And I just remember having family on the East Coast, my parents being really worried about them. Thankfully, they were okay, but just feeling like, okay, I'm really good at learning languages. I'm really interested in cultures. I'm really interested in people. How can I use these skills to make the world a better place and to make money and to support myself? So I remember thinking, well, maybe I'll try this national security thing because it feels like a very high level of being helpful. I went to every university I could to learn everything I could. I took Arabic at UCLA. I went to King's College London for my graduate degree in war studies. I really poured myself into this career. And when I graduated from grad school, it was the recession and I couldn't get a job. And I ended up being an admin assistant at an ad agency and just thinking, like, how do I get from here to where I want to be? And I decided to email my university and say, like, do you have a list of people who have graduated and moved to DC? And they sent me back a list of 2,000 names and emails. And I worked my way through those 2,000 names and emails. And because they were on the East Coast and I was on the West Coast, I woke up every morning at like 5 a.m. because I wanted to catch them before they went to work at 8 a.m. their time. And obviously, a lot of people working in national security are not going to appreciate a cold call because the nature of their work lends itself to quite a bit of privacy. But I did it anyway. And out of the 2,000 people that I called and emailed, there were probably like 50 to 100 very brave, generous souls that actually offered me their help. And I was like, I speak Arabic, I speak French fluently. I have my graduate degree from King's College London. I want to, come to DC. Finally, I just got so much momentum from all these conversations. It really felt like it was time for me to just move and see what happens. And so that's what I did. I moved to DC and I started networking. I started going to meetings with the 50 to 100 people that were nice to me. They started connecting me to their friends. Next thing I knew, I had 3 job offers. And in the 2 years to follow, I continued to get a bleed off of job offers from that little 6-week stint. So at the end of 6 weeks of that, I got 3 job offers. I was making 6 figures nearly. I was a defense contractor for the Pentagon. I was running a program that really was out of my league as far as like experience goes, but I was gifted this opportunity because they were a contractor that needed somebody with a lot of energy, and that somebody was me. So they had a lot of colonels and high-level military officials that were in that role before me, but the challenge was that they were trained to delegate, and they needed somebody in that role that was not going to delegate, but rather was going to manage the job themselves. So that was me. And I'm so grateful for the experience. And meanwhile, while I was doing that, I was helping people get job offers. I was helping friends. A lot of friends needed support with, they were in the recession too. And they all went to grad school with me, and they all moved to DC like I did, and they couldn't get jobs. And I remember on the weekends, helping them. And it evolved. They said, you should be a career coach. And I remember thinking, I'm 24 years old. I don't know anything about career coaching. I don't even know what a career coach is. And eventually I did it anyway. I started my practice, got a bunch of clients, and started speaking on stages, did my first TEDx talk, which was just as terrifying as it was amazing. And I don't know. It's interesting. I got a book deal. I had online courses. So many things happened from that moment at the Pentagon. And it really taught me that when you follow what feels right for you, there's a lot of clarity on the sidelines of that. It's not always what you're doing right in front of you, but on the sideline, you are highly likely to find something that is so true for you if you follow what feels right.
Mm. I love that the last message you shared is so key, and I would love to dig a lot deeper in this because I think that's the thing is noticing the clues. And I think, I mean, partly this podcast was birthed almost 5 years ago because of the clues I kept on getting, and people were like, "You need to use your voice," and it's just like the constant like. I started to like actually tune in, like, oh, maybe there's something to this, and I started to explore it, and then with the exploration, I was able to determine other things that I felt like called to do and whatnot. And I think sometimes we don't notice these little clues because we're so locked and loaded on what we're currently doing and how our identity is tied to that. So how did you, I mean, your journey has been so wild, and obviously you had the audacity to go after it like with complete vigor and confidence, which I think that in itself is something to definitely celebrate, considering as well being so young and all your accomplishments. But how does one start to, let's say somebody is not feeling that they're so aligned with the career they're in, what is like the first steps we should start to uncover, possibly like, or notice these breadcrumbs that are on the sidelines that we haven't yet really looked deeper into?
Yeah, I feel like if you don't like what you're doing or you feel really cut off, one of the biggest mistakes people will make is that they're going to make a project out of figuring out the answer next. And while we all want to know the answers, I think it's really important that you actually slow down and start to reconnect to yourself because it's really hard to figure out what you want when you're totally cut off. So I would say the first order of business is to just kind of ask yourself, like, what are the people, places, things that make me feel like me again? Um, for me, I grew up in California, so I genuinely feel like the ocean does something for me. The ocean makes me feel a sense of grounding. When I pull out my journal and I start journaling, it's like it's just unlike anything else for me. And so I would say, getting clear on what those places are. There's people. I have a lot of girlfriends that I love a lot, really amazing women. Dinner with a bunch of them tonight. But there's a couple in particular that like there's something about the vibe that they make me feel the most like me. They make me feel the most in harmony. So I make a point to see them, and I don't see them to talk about my career. I see them to feel like myself.
Mm.
Because a lot of the times when we are out of alignment with our career, we are out of touch with ourselves. So I would say if you're feeling stuck, just make the next few months about being you. And obviously, it's hard to be you when you don't like anything from 9 to 5 to be happy from 5 to 9. But I think just kind of remembering who you are. Also, classes. Like, I love to take art classes. I love to take dance classes. I'm an artist inside. So for me, anything I could do to bring me back to my artist is the thing. And, I opened up my book and I had a lot of success and failure. Like, I started my coaching business. I ended up creating online courses that I still have on job hunting and career clarity and podcasting. And then I ended up having a huge failure and I lost a ton of my money and almost all of it.
Hmm.
And I was 26. I created a lot of wealth after a lot of failure and I didn't know how to hold it. My mindset wasn't prepared for it. And I took a few years completely out just to take care of my own burnout. And, there's that, I think there's like a quote out there about how like some years answer questions and some years ask them.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people just want answer, 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 but it's just not how life works. Like, life is a place where you ask a question and in time you get an answer. And sometimes it's the next day, sometimes it's 3 years later. And that is what this is. There's a dignity to being in the process of life. So for me, it's been really important to allow that space. And when my business came tumbling down, my sister passed away. I called off a wedding to a guy I was with for 5 years, and I was burnt out. I built a company that was extremely successful, and then I let it fall apart. And I just needed a minute in the form of 3 years. And so my business became this slow simmer. And I did all the things I'm talking about. I just got back into me. And I remember thinking, like, how do I make money just to support myself? I don't need to overdo it. Some people exaggerate in their heads what they need to be making to support themselves, like how much they actually need. When we're in transition, sometimes we should maybe just be in a part-time job. Maybe we need space. Like, it's so important to start to get curious, like when you're in your transitions, like what do you really need in that time?
Mm.
And to give it to yourself. And a lot of times it's space. I ended up getting a book deal, which was so funny to get like a lucrative book deal to talk about all my failure. And I processed a lot of it in the book. I shared a lot of wisdom in the book, and not just from me, but from people, from books that I've read, from life that I'd experienced, from working in national security. I got my master's degree in spiritual psychology. I did a lot of things that poured into me. And then the book became really successful, not just in the United States, but it became a bestseller in Taiwan and in certain markets in Asia and Chinese, in complex, Mandarin. So it's just been a journey. And it's funny because I open up the book and I talk about how I've always wanted to be a poet and a mother. And the mother part I'm working on, still meeting the right person. But the poet part, now I own a speech writing house. And in the past year, we wrote 40 TEDx talks and we booked 39 of those people on the TEDx stage to give those talks. So I feel like I've finally made the ultimate, what I call U-turn, which is the title of
Right.
my book, to come home to myself.
Oh, I love that so much. And actually, I heard you speak about something you call joy journaling, and I love
Yeah.
this exercise. And this is kind of what you just touched on. And I think you really nailed it. Is I think so many people, and I talk about this too all the time. It's like we're so inundated with all the noise, and sometimes the thing we need most is no noise, so that we could
Yeah.
actually connect within and get clarity. I think clarity comes in those little silent moments, in those walks, in those times in nature, the times by ourselves. Sometimes in the darkest times is when we gain the clarity because we're finally like, enough is enough. And so
Yeah.
you talk about the joy journaling, and it's really getting clarity, like what brings you joy and how to connect that. Possibly, I know you speak about how, as many people here, follow your passion, follow your bliss, and to, go into a career that your passions are aligned with and whatnot. And you have a different view on this. And so I would love to know how to intersect. What is your take on this, of how we should look at our careers opposed to just like following the passion, and how this intersects as well with finding our joy again?
Mm. Well, okay. So the joy journal is something that I think there's a lot of wisdom in patterns. So for me, the intention of the joy journal is to help people start to pay attention to, like, what are their patterns? Where do they feel joy? Joy is a pattern and it's a feedback mechanism. So when I was at the Pentagon, the only time I really felt joy eventually was just at the coffee shop on my coffee break. Um, so I think it's really, really important that we are able to really get honest with ourselves around what was that moment every single day that made us feel connected, that made us feel like ourselves. It doesn't have to be work related because there's still wisdom in it. After
Mhm.
30 days of doing that, even if you just write one line every day of this was the most joyful moment for me, you'll notice a pattern. And I think the question is to ask yourself, what is the skill set that you're using? What are you doing when you feel that sense of connection and that sense of joy? Um, I think these are really, really powerful questions to be asking yourself as you start to take a look at your own joy and start to get educated on where you can be you, which I think is what life is really truly about.
Absolutely. I think there are so many clues in that, like where the joy is.
Hmm.
And of course, the only way we could gain clarity on that is possibly writing it down, because if we just have it in our head, we won't notice the pattern. And I think
Yeah.
that's the key, is finding the underlying pattern in the 30 days. I love that. And at the top of the book, you say that we shouldn't do what we love, we should do what we are. And you talk about finding your core nature. So, can you explain what the core nature means and what this really means, this message?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people are focused on what they love, and I feel like your interests are super relevant and interesting, but they're more of a backdrop than a foreground. I think knowing what you're interested in is useful, but ultimately, what we're doing all day is we're using our skill set. We're carrying out tasks that are directly related to our natural talents and gifts, hopefully, because if they're not related to your natural talents or gifts, chances are you're not going to be having as much fun as a lot of other people are having if they're in alignment with doing work that syncs with where they have talent. So I would say the most important thing is to ask yourself, where are you gifted? Where do you feel the most like you can carry out these tasks? People are giving you positive feedback. People really see the value that you're bringing to the table. As far as core nature goes, to me, that's defined as the energy that you bring when you walk into a room. So my core nature is pretty bubbly. Um, it's funny. I bring wisdom. So I would probably ask people that are close to you, like, how would you describe how the energy changes when I walk into a room? I feel like that's a really good question to start to get a sense of what your core nature is. And as you start to collect those adjectives from someone, I think you get a lot of wisdom around where you really want to be channeling your energy in your career. Because somebody like me whose core nature is like funny, like humorous and wise and communicative, like I'm going to do well in the people world. I'm going to do well in people businesses. Like people appreciate people who are funny and chatty. So I think knowing your core nature kind of helps you take a look at your career and say, where can I use these skills in a way that they're going to be met and I don't have to be anyone but me to move the needle forward in my career, my life.
That's great. And of course, somebody that is a people person and loves sharing wisdom and communicative, they're probably going to do well in speaking,
Yeah.
possibly speaking about
Well,
something that they're passionate.
it depends. Like it depends on if you're an introvert or an extrovert, right? So some communicators want to communicate by themselves in their house. I'm actually oddly one of them. Like I feel like there's a lot of people who have businesses like me where you see a lot more of them speaking on stages. I keep that to a minimum for myself because I actually love, like, I'm writing all these TED Talks with my speechwriters for other people. So I actually love to be behind the people. And
Mm.
so I think when you look at your skill set, another question to ask is, are you an introvert or extrovert? So I'm really good at words, but um, yeah, I also think that as someone who is incredibly, I don't want to say incredibly introverted, but more introverted than extroverted. People think I'm an extrovert because I'm chatty, but I need time alone to kind of recharge for sure. So
I,
knowing that about yourself is
yeah.
huge.
I'm exactly the same way. And I find that a lot of speakers are introvert extroverts. I find like that they're able to deliver that energy when they're in the zone, and then they love to revert back to themselves and in that time and intimate time with themselves. So I feel a lot of funny enough speakers are that way that I've noticed in the
Yeah.
personal development space. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about, and I want to go a little deeper into this, but just to touch on in your wildly popular TED Talk, which of course, like I said, will be in the show notes, you touch on, besides the story that you share and the whole through line, you share there's three ways to make U-turns in your life. And so if you could share those three steps that you share in the TED Talk, because I think this is really key, because obviously your whole book is about, and I love the concept, the through line in your book is all these references to like U-turns and turn signals and rerouting and whatnot. But, making a U-turn in your life, because as people have heard this term, especially over the last years, like pivoting was a common term used during COVID, or reinventing yourself. And I think so many people these days are in that season. They're reinventing themselves. They want to be more aligned with something they feel good, like that it's what they should be doing in life that they feel aligned with. And so these U-turns are something that I think we're all doing, but some are stuck. So what are the three ways
Mm.
you turn? Where do we begin?
So in my TED talk, I talk about doing a self audit and the power of that. I think like obviously you can't change what you don't see. So and sometimes we don't make space to actually see what's going on for us. So I would say first things first is just ask yourself like, where do I feel out of integrity? Where do I feel sticky? Where do I feel disconnected? Like, what is it about my work that's making me feel that way? Is it the people? I think there's three different categories that people need to look at when it comes to their own career dissatisfaction. The first one is the what. And we've kind of talked a lot about that. That has to do with what is your core skill set? Are you spending most of your day doing what you're gifted at? I like to see people who are spending 70% of their time in their gift. The second thing is the how your career looks. Given that half of people leave their job because they don't like their boss, we can assume that how things look for you in your job, how it's set up, matters just as much as what you're doing, what the actual tasks are that you're carrying out. So, how has to do with your core values. Like, what do you value in your life? And not just saying what the words are for them, but actually defining them. Because a lot of people will say, oh, I value freedom. What does that mean for you? Maybe that means creative freedom. Maybe that means you want to work on your own ideas. Whereas somebody else, it means they're done at 2 o'clock so they could go take a walk with their dog. So I think getting really clear definitions of what freedom is or what adventure is. Is it skydiving or is it trying a new restaurant? Like, what is adventure for you? So I think that really getting clear on the how, because sometimes people are in a career where they're in the right job, but the person they work for or something is in direct violation of a very important core value. And your
Mm.
core values are non-negotiable principles that you're living your life by. And if you're in violation of one of those in your job, like you got to go. Like there, unless you can work through it with HR, it's just so important. And then I would say from there, it's your energy levels, right? Like I have Lyme disease. It doesn't really affect me that much. But I get sick easier than a lot of people. So because that is the case for me, I always knew I couldn't really work in corporate. I always knew I wasn't gonna be able to last in corporate because I don't really know anyone who has 6 weeks of sick days when they get a cold. Like, and it's not that I'm sick in bed the whole time, but I'm not well enough to think very sharp and like be super powerful and effective. Thank God for my speech writing team, if that's the case. So I've really built a life in honoring of my core values, and my energy levels, and my skill set, which is words. And if you look at my bank account and you look at my whole business, every penny I'm making pretty much ties back to words. So I'm honoring my core skill set. So yeah, when you do a self audit and you look at those things of like, what do I really value? What are my skill sets? Where do I feel out of integrity with myself? That's the first step. I think that awareness without action can be kind of toxic at a certain point. So from there, getting really honest with yourself about like, well, what do you really need to do to change it? Sometimes people, I think, indulge too much in the whole story of like why they are the way they are. Like the reason I did this is because of my mom this when I was 7. It's like that's all very useful, but now it's time to actually not repeat it because it's not your mom anymore, it's you.
Right.
And there's power in that. So I would say that's the next step. And yeah, I mean, there's so much, but I would say ultimately clarity comes from engagement. I talk about that in the TED Talk. So, what can you do to really get a sense of, yeah, like how do you engage? What are some ways for you to get the clarity? Sometimes engagement looks as simple as reading a book. Other times it's more complex. It looks like um, maybe not reading a book, but taking a class or even taking a job and realizing that it might not be for you and you have to course correct. But that to me is what engagement means.
Mm. And I know that's one of the things you talk about is some people underestimate the power in conversations that
Oh,
can turn
yeah.
into opportunities. And I think uh, many people hate asking for help, but I think these days, especially, it's about who you know. And I think so many people get job offers now based on who they know and through maybe a conversation led to this conversation and passed along. And so I think so many people get held back by their own ego being like, I don't want to ask for help. But there's so many opportunities in these conversations from who we know, possibly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that.
it's so true.
Yeah. So talking about your TED Talk, because I know this is one of the things, as you're mentioning, you're helping people write TED Talks, which is such a powerful tool for a personal brand. So first, I would love to know, based on a lot of people being entrepreneurs these days, whoever's listening to this, who do you think a TED Talk is meant for? Who should consider this? And why is it such a powerful tool? Because I know for
Yeah.
you, it's been a game changer.
Yeah, I don't think anything's impacted my career quite like the TEDx brand. I think it is the superpower highway into personal branding. So, whether you've been working and you don't have a brand and you want to jumpstart your brand, TED Talk is a no brainer. If you do have a brand but you want to take to the next level, TED Talk is a no brainer. Where else do you have 40 million people subscribed waiting to see a new piece of content? Where else can, there's a lot people don't know about the TEDx brand. For number one, if your talk does well on the TEDx channel, it gets picked up by the TED channel. So then you get a second boost. And then if it does well there, it gets picked up by their translators and it gets all over the country in different languages. So the power of this brand, the virality of this brand. And then obviously anybody who's going to do a TED Talk, they're thinking a lot about how does it go viral? How do I make the most impact, get the most bang for my buck? And I would say it's just incredibly important that when you write your TED Talk, you say to yourself, this is going to be, I'm going to write the best thing I've ever written. And that is your best shot at going viral, because when you deeply resonate, other people will too. And that's really the idea. If you're just writing something to put more things out there, it doesn't usually stand out in the pile. But if you are in a deep reckoning and a deep honesty about something you know and something you want to share, your odds of going viral significantly go up.
Remarkable. And you help people do this through writing, coaching, and then also pitching, if I'm correct. So what does it look like if somebody were to work with you? If this is somebody, like, let's say somebody is building, which I want to touch on this, like building their personal brand, and let's say they're a coach or entrepreneurship, or they just have like this powerful story and message to share. Because I don't believe, actually, I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Like, does somebody have to have a name to pitch themselves as somebody to speak for TEDx? Or is it really for anybody that just has, they know they have a powerful message to share?
I think that everybody has a powerful message to share, and it's really just whether they've tuned into it or not. We try to work with people who maybe have some sort of sense, but maybe they're not crystal clear yet. We like to work with people who know they have something to say, know they're very passionate about educating about something, whether they're a surgeon or an animal rights activist or an author. A lot of people who've come in have some sort of body of work, some sort of like pivotal thinking about something, and they want to tease it out even more, and they want support. Most people who come in that we love the most to work with are not natural born writers, but they're creators in some way. And some people who come in just want to leave a legacy. They just know that this platform, where I have 10,000 people watching me every single day on there. So to me, it's like, it's not just about impact and what you're saying for the world, but for yourself as a business or as a person with any sort of mission. Like, where else are you going to get that many thousands of people thinking about things for you, watching you and getting to know you and how you think and your most innermost thoughts? And so, yeah, there's been so much magic on the goal line for me, whether that's a spokesperson deal, a book deal, an agent, a speaking tour. All these things have happened. My business has probably done more than $1 million in revenue directly tied to TEDx.
Mm.
But I also think it's brought some mysticism into my career, and that's what I'm the most grateful for. Is it's attracted opportunities I would have never thought about for myself. I would have never pursued for myself.
Mm.
But because they came towards me, because of this platform that people saw me on, it's had a real hand and influence in my career.
So remarkable. And so talking about a personal brand, do you feel, everybody listening to this right now should be thinking about their personal brand, and what does that even mean or look like? If you could describe that, what do you think are some of the things people should focus on?
I think that a personal brand is about having an influence on something you care about, and it should come back to you as much as it should pour out into the world, right? So a lot of people, if you're in corporate and you want a bigger paycheck, a personal brand is an obvious move. It makes you stand out more than every other employee. If you are a business owner and you want more clients, or you just want to establish your authority, it's a no-brainer. um, it is something that needs to be kept up. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So, the first 2 years of I've been in business 12 years. The first 2 years of my business, I just did blogging, I talk a lot about how the internet for me feels like a bunch of islands, and you kind of just live on one and build it out. So I lived on the blogging island for a couple years, and my thing with blogging is go wide, don't go deep. So if a platform accepts you as a blogger, give them 3, 4, 5 blog posts and then use it to get onto the next blog
Mm.
platform, and keep climbing in the ranks of higher and higher to get on the best possible platforms you can. Um, yeah. And then as far as, I don't know, just like really connecting to yourself when it comes to your message, like realizing that sometimes you don't figure out what your message is in your brand until you've put content out and you really can take a look at it. We wrote a TED talk for an HR executive. She realized at the end of the TED talk, her message was that, when you're a leader, people don't work for you, you work for them. And that's what real leadership is. So we were able to infuse that throughout her talk. Somebody else is a PhD and has studied trauma, and she's studied epigenetics. And for her, we realized the message was you don't have to find your purpose because you already know it. And what helps you know it is when you work on your trauma that's blocking you from it. So there's just so many different messages that people can unlock when they've really committed to building the brand, but you need to make that commitment, and it takes time, and it's a worthy cause.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about also Dharma, and I would love people to understand this, because I think there's your career, there's those things you're passionate about that bring you joy, and then there's your Dharma. And I know you feel you are definitely living in your Dharma as well. So what does it mean to uh, be doing your Dharma?
Yeah, I think your Dharma is something. I feel like there's a few lily pads in your career. The first one is like you're fine. You have a job. Maybe there's something better for you, but you're not really in the mood to go find what it is. It sounds like a project for you. If that's the case, I feel like you're just on the first lily pad. Then there's the second lily pad. To me, that's about figuring out your gift. That's what my book is designed to do. That's what my podcast and my courses are designed to do. The message of all my work is don't do what you love, do what you are. And the podcast is and the book are here to help you with that. So that gets you to the second lily pad. When you get there, that's about knowing your gift. That's about knowing where you're talented. When you work in your zone of talent, when you work in a zone of where you're gifted, you open yourself up for more opportunities in ways that you maybe never thought about. Because what's happening is people see people who are gifted. A lot of people don't know where they're gifted. They're not working in where they're gifted. And I do think everybody has some sort of gift that is worth knowing and paying attention to. Um, so I would say really getting honest with yourself about what are those talents, doing the work, whether it's reading my book or somebody else's, to just get clear. And then when you're clear, opportunities start to come to you because people see talent, people see gifts. And when you master that, if you start taking the right yeses and saying no to the proper no's, you start to advance yourself into the third lily pad, which I think not everybody makes it to. And it's not that you're better or worse, whether you've made it to it or not. But I think that's the space of Dharma. I think it's that third lily pad where, I don't know, it's like time just kind of flies and you're working and it just feels kind of magical. And I really accessed that feeling when I was writing my book. And I don't really think I've had it since then.
Mm.
And I'm grateful to have experienced it and met that feeling, because it's so special to feel that way in your career. And that's what I wish for anyone, is to at least give yourself an opportunity to kind of swim over to that third lily pad. You really can't get there until you figure out your, yeah,
The
until you figure out
second
your
one.
gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good. Well, I know you have a lot of offerings, and we kind of touched on the TED Talk, helping people build their talk and giving the confidence to deliver it powerfully. And then, of course, to be accepted on a TEDx stage, and so much more from there, and how to leverage a TED Talk in your personal brand, which is awesome. So, of course, I'm going to plug all that in the show notes. Of course, the easiest way to find your gifts is reading her book, You Turn. Phenomenal book, and you can't
Thank
miss
you.
it. Bright yellow.
Yeah.
uh, but also some of your other offerings. What else are you working on today that you help people with to help them further their career along and really live in their genius?
Yeah, I have poured so much of myself into the TEDx offering. So right now it's a one-stop shop. You can see everything at ashleystahl.com/TEDx. And we write and book you for your TEDx. And we coach you on your practicing, and we make your slides. It's a one-stop shop. You write as little or as much as you want to. Obviously, we love people who want to participate in the writing so that it's more of their soul than just ours. But I learned everything about speech writing through working in Obama administration and watching Obama speak. And I use his framework for my TEDx talks, which has been highly effective. And it's just been really beautiful. So if somebody listening feels like it's time to make an impact, they want to give a TEDx talk and step on stage, definitely check that out. We're always running a couple months with a wait list or backed up, because we try to keep the quality as high as possible without over committing ourselves. So if you're thinking about it, we would love to hear from you.
So remarkable. All right. Everything will be in the show notes for that. And definitely, I just encourage anybody listening that has the interest to pursue that, whether it be, next year or this year, to look into it and maybe at least put it on your dream list of things to manifest into your life. And
Yeah.
put action to that. So that's super exciting. So I just want to close off and asking you what I ask all my guests, which is, if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you've learned that you just feel everybody needs to hear and you need to shout it out to the world right now, what would that piece of wisdom be and why?
Mm. I don't know. What's coming forward for me now is like you're allowed to change, like so many people have built something and they really let that hold them hostage. And I don't know. I guess it depends on how you look at life, but I don't look at it as like this progressive thing you have to keep building on. I look at it as a series of experiences. And I think there's a lot of fulfillment in choosing experiences that really meet you where you are and nourish you and give you something that you want to know or experience. So life moves and so should you. That would be my message.
Oh, I think everybody needs to hear that right now. So thank you for that. Ashley Stahl, this has been such an honor. Where can people best find you? I know you left your
Yeah.
website. Is it Ashley Stahl and all the socials?
Yeah, Ashley Stahl galore. And my book's everywhere books are sold. It's called U Turn, Get Unstuck, Discover Your Direction, Design Your Dream Career. Great book for you if you're thinking about making a change and you're not necessarily 100% sure what it's going to be yet. Um, and yeah, there's plenty of courses on my site, a bunch of free podcast episodes, of course, just a ton of resources over at ashleystahl.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been an honor. Thank you for all the wisdom you have shared and how you're helping people really pivot into what is aligned with them. So thank
Thanks
you
for
for
having me.
everything.